So as Ellie said, I'm the director of the Center on AI, Security and Technology at RAND. RAND, for those of you who don't know, is one of the first and largest think tanks in the world. We help support the US government on pretty much most topics the US government engages in, including military, intelligence, healthcare, infrastructure, education, and more. Do people hear me? Is this working properly? Okay. Okay. And then, excellent, you guys can see this. Check that what you're seeing relates to what I'm expected. Can someone help with so RAND is most famous for setting US government strategy for nuclear war during the Cold War. That is its biggest claim to fame. And so what I'm going to do in the 30 minutes that we have is talk about slightly even bigger risks, let's call it, even bigger risks than deleting a whole database. And arguably, I will make a controversial claim and discuss even bigger risks, I would argue, than even fully autonomous cyber hacking agents, though that is indeed a very big risk that I'm quite concerned about. So let's start. So obviously, if you're here, you're quite motivated about AI security. You think it's important. But I just want to flag, I'm going to talk about a few risks. AI security is not only important in the sense that we want to make sure that bad things don't happen, but for us to be able to achieve the goals, the ambitious goals that we have with AI, AI security is a prerequisite for that to be possible. Because if we try to incorporate AI into some of our most important systems, whether it's in healthcare or finance or defense, it'll end up being a threat to those systems rather than a benefit if we don't secure it properly. Let alone the fact that malicious actors could end up using these capabilities to cause unprecedented harm. We'll talk about a few examples of that in a moment. And of course, even if smaller harms happen, if we don't prepare for them, if we don't protect against them, if we don't prevent them, public backlash can be worse than it needs to be if we don't prepare in advance. And so, in short, securing AI is a prerequisite for sustainable and safe and beneficial AI. Now, Omer stole my favorite topic in these AI forums, which is talking about how hard it is to know what the future is. And so I got stuck with the talk titled "The Future of AI Security," which is hard to spend talking about how difficult it is to know what it is. Now, I don't know how to predict the future, so preparing for this talk, I kind of searched online. And this is a true story. The first thing I found was this. This is the first result when you ask how to predict the future. And I tried it out, but I mean, I went through so many runes, and none of them seemed to predict confidential computing. And so I thought, okay, I gotta go a different way. The second, this is still a true story. The second result is this one, and this one I knew I was in good hands because it's written by a world-renowned futurological predictologist. So that was very useful. But still, I decided to take a step back and use a method from a source I trust more, and that is extrapolation. Now, I just found out this morning that apparently Caleb uses some of the similar methodologies. So let's acknowledge, obviously, trends don't always continue unperturbed into the future. They can either break down, they can accelerate. What we're going to try and do is talk about what trends exist right now, and if we do project them into the future, what are potential thresholds that might be interesting, phase transitions, qualitative changes, and we'll use them to reveal possibilities, but not imply that they are destiny, okay? Hopefully, I'm going to try and kind of avoid some of the issues that this cake salesman have by only taking trends that have held true for quite a few years and only trying to extrapolate them a few years into the future, okay? Still doesn't mean that they're true, but I think especially with AI, we have often made mistakes in recent years. People have mistakenly predicted AI as frequently by assuming that trends will not continue as they have by assuming that trends will continue. So it's at least worth considering these possible continuation of these trends. So I'm going to talk about 4 trends. And the first one is capabilities development accelerating. And let's talk about capabilities development in a few different fields. First is the one you all are most familiar with. So Caleb already mentioned kind of in cyber capabilities, the recent Expo results, kind of like autonomous pen testing. I want to maybe add to that the results just from a few weeks ago, the discovery by Anthropic of a mostly autonomous cyber operation, which still had some support from humans, but kind of, at least according to Anthropic, their AI system kind of only needed to check in once in a while and was doing most of the operation themselves. They described, the relationship between the human and the AI in this graph, which shows kind of how the AI is orchestrating a wide range of different actions, mostly without the human involved. It's always nice when corporations describe how they disrupted the cyber attack without mentioning that they also facilitated the cyber attack. But this one is the one you're most familiar with, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. Maybe I'll spend a bit more time on biological capabilities. So my center actually does two things. It does AI and bio. So one of my hobbies is telling computer scientists about how much they're not tracking what's happening in bio and how terrifying that really is. So last year, RAND did a study trying to assess how many people could single-handedly decide to kill more than 100 million people. Okay, RAND is a very fun place. And our conclusion was that the list of people who could do so includes a number of major world leaders that you can count on one hand. And it also includes several hundreds of thousands of virologists, immunologists, and microbiologists that could trigger a large-scale pandemic. Now, that is scary enough as it is. Luckily, though, most people don't want to trigger a pandemic. So even though there are hundreds of thousands of people, we don't see pandemics triggering or intentional pandemics triggering every specific year. But AI is interacting in interesting ways with this threat. So there's a whole kind of cottage industry of trying to evaluate whether AI can do dangerous biological things. And for a long time now, we've had mainly tests that try to test knowledge. So say, here's the knowledge you would need that, for example, a virology PhD would have when they're trying to synthesize a virus. And now we know all the tests that they go through in their PhD, and we can test the AI on that. And for quite a while, AI systems have been significantly better than virology PhDs. But of course, people raise the correct caveat, which is, well, it's easy for us to test knowledge. These LLMs tend to be pretty good at knowledge, but that's very different from the implicit knowledge you need to actually go into the lab and do things effectively, right? So one example of a new evaluation that came out this year is what's called the virology capabilities test. And it tries to take a step in the direction of measuring the right thing. And what they did is they asked a bunch of virology professors, when your student is trying to synthesize a virus and do other what's called dual use activities, what questions do they come to you with? What problems do they come in, and what can't they do themselves, and you need to help them to do when they're trying to actually synthesize a virus or do similar things in the lab. And you can see here one example of such a question. You don't need to read the whole thing, but roughly the question goes something like, I'm trying to, I'm working with an influenza virus, and I did 1, 2, 3, I put these materials and so on, and here's a picture of the result of what my little, what's this thing called? Petri dish, thank you, looks like. And so, where did this go wrong? What did I do incorrectly? And then they also took from the professors the correct answers for these questions. And then at the bottom, this is a bit hard to understand the graph, but in the bottom they compared the performance of different AI models to different virology professors and experts from around the world. And lo and behold, sometime late in 2024, AI models started to significantly outperform virology PhDs. I'll say as a side note, the PhDs actually got to choose which questions were in their area of expertise within virology, and the AIs did not, and still they won over them. But long story short, now we're still doing, there's novel real-world wet lab experiments that are still ongoing. But roughly the situation right now with biology is that our evaluations are imperfect. We don't know exactly what the capabilities are, but pretty consistently, every test we are able to put to AI, it is able to solve. As a result of this, Anthropic, now 6 months ago, announced that their models, they believe, provide significant uplift for non-experts trying to develop biological weapons. And a month later, OpenAI made a similar announcement that its model provides what they call meaningful assistance to novice actors in creating biological or chemical threats. Now, I'll say we at RAND also do these evaluations, and there has been a lot of improvements in those capabilities. And if anyone wants to take the bet, I'm happy to take a bet on whether there will be a more concerning announcement on biological capabilities in the next quarter by Frontier AI Lab. This is another graph that Caleb talked about. I want to bring it up again just to mention, I talked about specific capabilities. It's just worth recognizing as we talk about trends into the future that many people are concerned about AI not because of specific dangerous capabilities, but also because of it could have highly capable, autonomous, general capabilities. And I also think that this graph is an interesting one because I mentioned a moment ago, trends don't always continue, and they definitely don't always continue along the exact same line that they've continued before. But sometimes they do. And this is a nice example of that. Since this graph and kind of the doubling time of the time horizon every 7 months has come up, it's been holding up pretty well. And so we should at least consider as one possibility the fact that it'll continue to hold for a while. What are the implications of all of these advances and capabilities, both beneficial and dangerous? Well, for AI security, one implication is a very good one. AI will increasingly contribute to security. We just talked about Omer and Tamar have talked about some of the challenges we have ahead in AI security. We might hope that AI can help us with that. Frontier Labs and many other companies are already reporting non-trivial acceleration in their security work due to the models themselves. And if the trend continues, that might grow exponentially, and that'll be exciting. The bad part of this is that we have been constantly surprised. AI researchers have been surveyed on their expectations for what AI will do. We're not used to true exponential progress in actual object-level capabilities. We're maybe used to some startups, exponentially growing, but true research exponential progress is something that we're not used to. In 2019 or 2020, there was this enormous survey of AI researchers, and they asked for a bunch of different capabilities, AI capabilities. When will this capability be possible? And they said, okay, in which year do you expect this on average to be possible? And looking back in 5 years, there was effectively no correlation between which capabilities researchers thought would arrive first and which ones actually did arrive first. And B, they were so bad and they were so over-predicting the time that it would take that there were even tasks in that survey that the survey developers did not know yet were already possible, and researchers expected those to take more than a decade until they come. Okay? So we should expect to be surprised by which capabilities and possibly by how fast they come. And then finally, there are, of course, potential implications that are driving significant controversy today, and that controversy will only grow. If you take out that time horizon, task time horizon graph that Meter put out, and you take it out only 3.5 years, okay, but you assume that that doubling every 7 months continues, in 3.5 years, you will have AIs that can do tasks that humans can do over a week, okay? You all, I assume, have worked with AI models. Maybe you've already worked with agents. You know that they're very, very smart. There's a lot of things that they know and you don't know. But one of the main things limiting their economic benefits is just how much you need to manage them every few minutes. If you could have an AI with that set of capabilities, and you could say, do this work for a week, and it'll perform as well as a professional human, that would have very strong implications, potentially increasing the size of the pie of the economy, but also shifting who gets to benefit from that quite significantly. Now, as I said, trends don't always continue. So let's talk a bit about what could disrupt this trend. So one thing that could happen is that we might be in a bubble, right? People love talking about that these days. AI might be in a bubble. We might have a crash soon. The bubble might pop. That is possible. There are a lot of incentives for AI companies to try and race to be the #1 company. There are some natural monopolies in tech that encourage that. And indeed, if there is a bubble, that will delay things. A lot less investment in AI will take place in the next few years. I do want to remind people, because if we do enter a bubble, I think a lot of people will incorrectly conclude that that means that all the incredible capabilities that people are talking about in the future are not going to come. And that is an incorrect inference. And I want to remind people of the dot-com bubble, which was a bubble and did burst. And a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people lost their savings. But then a few years later, we have achieved more than was originally expected in how the internet was about to transform our lives. Okay? So a bubble will delay things, but it doesn't necessarily imply what will happen in the long-term future. Second is energy bottlenecks. It is expected that at least in the US, which currently holds about 70% of the compute in the world, by 2030, there will not be enough electricity generation, even with planned increases in electricity generation, to continue the current trend in investments in compute. That is indeed a concern that billions of dollars are being spent on as we speak. Though I also want to remind people that right now, increases in compute are responsible for about 5x growth per year in investment in AI, but increases in efficiency of use of the existing compute are responsible for about 3x. So if we run into an energy bottleneck, we will slow down, but we will not stop. Okay, we will continue, this trend will continue, albeit in a slower rate. China could invade Taiwan or blockade Taiwan. If you look at prediction markets, that is a worryingly likely thing to happen in the next few years. That would have direct effects on blocking Western chip supply chains, which critically rely on TSMC, which is based in Taiwan. That may indeed temporarily slow at least the US's or the West's investment in AI, though a lot of other things will happen very fast. And so that'll be an interesting world to be in. And then finally, all of these shifts would be shifts to slow us down. There are possible shifts that would speed us up. The one people talk about most frequently, at least in the industry, is recursive self-improvement, right? If those AI models help improve our AI R&D and make that go more quickly, then we can have kind of a super exponential increase in rate and things start going a lot faster. So that's trend number one. Let's talk about trend number two, how security interacts with, how security has been catching up with this AI progress. So in the last 5 years, due to these capability improvements, we've moved from AI being an acronym that non-techie people generally didn't know. They didn't exactly know what you mean when you say AI, to AI being a key and one of the most reported on components of US and China competition, and the Pope saying consistently that he thinks that AI is the biggest challenge of his papacy. Okay, that's a big shift in 5 years. Let's see how security is doing in catching up. So I think we've had incremental progress on securing AI systems. There has been progress, but I don't think it's remotely close to the rate we're seeing with AI. And I'll give one example. Okay, this is one small sample of the AI security landscape, but let's talk about confidential computing. Okay, confidential computing for several years now has been the top thing that frontier AI CISOs have been talking about as like, this is the one thing they're most excited about. It's the next step to improving the security of AI systems. Where were we a few years ago? So when the Hopper chips in 2022 were released, in terms of compute, they were able to do 2 petaflops, and this is for specifically dense FP8 operations. This year, we have the Blackwell Ultra chips 3 years later, and they are now 15 petaflops. So we get for the same amount of chips, we get 7.5 times more compute. Okay, that's a very fast exponential way faster than Moore's law and things like that. what has happened on security capabilities? Well, 3 years ago, the Hopper was also the first GPU supporting confidential computing. That was very, very exciting. It missed some features. So for example, one of the reasons the Frontier labs could not use it is because it didn't support kind of a multi-GPU setup. And obviously, if you want a Frontier model, you're not going to put it on a single GPU, so they can't really use it. This year, some of those missing features have been added. So NVIDIA claims that it is usable by the labs. I'm not aware of a single lab that currently uses it. They are still announcing that they are very excited to incorporate confidential computing, and they've made a lot of other incremental progress. But we're not seeing that explosive increase in either investments or results as we see with capabilities themselves. What does that imply? Well, one, increasingly critical infrastructure is going to depend on AI because of its capabilities. I've personally spoken to people who are responsible for acquisition, both in American critical infrastructure and in national security, saying that they are feeling pressure to incorporate AI, and then they have existing security standards, and they say, it doesn't live up to the standards that we have right now for what we need to be able to incorporate something in this very critical and sensitive system. And then they're getting pressured to either lower those standards or make exceptions to those standards because they want AI to be incorporated. The second thing we should expect is a race to the bottom on security. And what do I mean by that? If you're an AI company and you don't secure your AI sufficiently, you take the risk of being hacked and either losing your edge or maybe disrupting your operation and kind of losing the race. But if you decide to invest in security significantly more than your competitors invest in it, at the expense of not investing your all in the race and in capabilities, you are assuring that you will fall behind your competitors. And that is why I've heard multiple CISOs in Frontier Labs say things like, our policy is to get these models everywhere as quickly as possible, and anything that will slow that down will not be accepted, okay? And the result is that while American companies compete with each other for dominance, they're giving a free ride to Chinese models and other adversaries because you allow companies to distill your model and get close just as long as you are number one, and it doesn't matter if number two is your American competitor or your Chinese competitor. What might disrupt this trend? Well, a few different things. If government decided to intervene, a classic role of government is to kind of set a certain set of standards to avoid this race to the bottom, to say, okay, you all want to be more secure, but you can't afford to decide it on your own, because if anyone else defects, then they'll take a lead. So we can just say, okay, let's give us a set of standards, and we will require that everyone lives up to those standards. Could, of course, have a major incident, right? If we knew that a critical industry system or a national security system, which already are utilizing, and we'll get to that in a moment, already utilizing AI, is undermined, both the companies could voluntarily decide to change how they're doing things, as well as the government could decide to intervene. Let's talk about the third trend, comparing offensive capabilities to defensive ones. So a few months ago, the Frontier AI Cybersecurity Observatory launched. That effort tracks capabilities of Frontier AI across 15 cyber benchmarks, and that was the number at the time. It's grown since then. And they find that AI currently both has and is expected to continue to have more benefits for attackers than defenders. So what you're seeing here is an assessment of different capabilities that attackers utilize and different capabilities that defenders utilize. And you can see the red means we've already seen large-scale real-world impact. Orange means demonstrated real-world impact. Yellow is demonstrated in research papers, and gray is no demonstrated effect. Now, the specific coloring here is again, this is from June or something like that, so this is already slightly out of date, but the dynamic and the pattern has not changed. Now, what are the implications of that? Well, I think some companies need to reconsider some of their assumptions. Industry loves to say the only thing that will stop a bad guy with AI is a good guy with AI, okay? That is a very, very common, if not phrase, then belief in the AI company. Now, that may be true, okay? Things might change. But right now, that's not the way it's looking. And even if, actually, I'll get back to even ifs in a moment. The other thing is thing that Omer has highlighted as well. Anyone who has ever worked with a Windows computer knows that something that is 99% complete is very different from something that is 100% complete. The difference, the Cyber Week guy that was here before flagged this as well. There's a huge difference between 99% autonomous and 100% autonomous. Omer mentioned the implications for speed. There are other implications as well. The set of actors that can abuse a system, if it's 99% autonomous, is much, much smaller than the set of actors that can abuse a system if it's 100% autonomous, because you have no skill requirements if you want to abuse a system that's 100% autonomous. Not to mention that maybe you don't even need that malicious actor. If it's 100% autonomous, now you need to start worrying about what's called loss of control events, right? If you have a system that is both highly capable in the cyber realm and fully autonomous, it sounds a bit hard to stop it, right? If we think about the Morris worm in the late 80s, right? That wasn't a very intelligent system, but if it can propagate on its own, it can start bringing down half of the internet. What might disrupt it? So, as we've said before, so we were very bad at predicting capabilities, okay? So it may definitely switch, okay? It is very possible that we will see AI helping defenders more than vendors. The capability might switch, but it's worth flagging. There's maybe a deeper deployment challenge. If I am an attacker, I need one group, maybe of talented entrepreneurial people, maybe of people who've been lucky, to deploy a thing to create huge harm. If I now want to protect the public, if I want to protect critical infrastructure, I need hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of organizations. Some of them have been running since the 40s to update all of their systems in whatever is the newest tech, okay? And that's not an easy thing to do. So I think that's not going to change much in the near term. The long term has very different dynamics, okay? We can talk about that. I'm not making any claims about long term at the limit, will it be offense biased or defense biased. But in the near term, while we're still deploying novel, new, exciting capabilities, attackers can do that much more quickly and easily than defenders. Finally, let's talk about the fourth trend, and the last trend for us, which is increased government involvement. Government involvement has been increasing. Since the early 2020s, leading government officials have been talking about their strategic interest in AI. Okay, there's been a lot of talk about why it's very important. The Biden administration started to do more. There's one big famous AI executive order that Biden put out, and there's one big meeting that he had with leaders in AI extracting voluntary commitments. We've talked about that executive order and that meeting for years and its implications. But things are accelerating pretty rapidly now. Trump, in his first year, has already put out at least 9 executive orders. I say at least because the government's official counting of AI executive orders has not been able to track the correct number. There are AI executive orders that they have not been successfully able to update all of them on their website. In those, he includes an AI action plan that calls for building high-security data centers for military and intelligence usage, for developing federal capacity for AI incident response, for strengthening AI export control enforcement, and more. He has announced $500 billion in public-private partnerships to build data centers. He's announced a national effort for AI-powered scientific innovation, and the Department of Defense and the Pentagon have already been spending hundreds of millions of dollars per year per frontier AI company. All of that has been growing in more than 10x per year. So we have a rapid increase. I don't have much time, so much like the AI industry, I think I'll just skip over the EU. And finally, just to say, Israel itself has invested more than 500 million shekels in its AI national program, and Al Pi Mekorot Zarim also invests in AI in ways that it does not talk about. What are the implications of that? I think the biggest thing that I want to take from this is that AI may drive national security in the future, okay? We are in AI as a startup mode today. That may not be true in 3 to 4 years. And the importance of that is that that changes everything. We are not used to our tech driving national security and what the government response to that is. There are not that many examples, but there are a few. Nuclear weapons are a good example. For the last 80 years, if you think of a good idea that's relevant to nuclear weapons, at least by US law, it is now classified, even though you just made it up in your basement, and it is now illegal, and you will go to jail if you talk about it with people. Okay, that is not a thing we are used to in the AI world. At wartime, this gets worse. When metal is needed to create tanks, okay, metal is a very basic technology, but the government will tell you need to give it to the government if needed. Okay, so that is a thing that looks very different from the current world, but may come to pass if AI becomes more capable. Of course, none of this is predestined, none of this is inevitable, none of this is impossible to change. In fact, it is possible to change, to support, to prevent, and some of the people who are already most influential in this space are here in this room, and some of the people who could become the people who are most influential for that purpose are in this room. So what I want to encourage you all is to think about what are the long-term possibilities that may arise in this space and what needs to be done today. And I'll say just kind of very quickly, I think some things we want are advanced, let's call them China-proof hardware and data centers, scalable formal methods, which could really change the relative dynamics between attackers and defenders, defense-biased capabilities, not things that help both attackers and defenders, but that disproportionately help defenders, and AI containment, which is a field that really needs some security people and really doesn't have it. We are also hiring, so if you're interested, please go to jobs.rand.org or talk to me today. And thank you all for listening. I'll be taking questions at 2.